And welcome, ladies and gents, to Chapter 9, Lesson 4. We're talking here about fractions, decimals, and percents. Particularly sooner or later, if I give you one of those representations, whether it's a picture, a decimal, a percent, or a fraction, if I give you just one, you should come up with the others. And so our objective for the day is to represent percents as fractions, in simplest form, of course, and as well to represent percents as decimals. Now, we've already gone and simplified fractions or made equivalent fractions, and so we're going to build on that skill today. Go ahead and pause, write down your work, and come on back when you're ready. And so here we go. First, we discuss percent. Now, I want you to think about those letters whenever you hear them together. How many years are in a century? How many cents are in a dollar? How many centimeters in a meter? Every time you hear cent, it's going to mean out of 100. So when it says percent, just break that word down. Literally, it means per or out of 100. So we can use that symbol as just a quick, handy way to write a fraction with a common denominator of 100. As an example, instead of saying 8 out of every 100 professional basketball players are female, you can simply say 8% of professional basketball players are female. Now, renaming is another way of saying rewriting percents as fractions. This won't come as too much of a surprise to you, but if you write a percent as a fraction out of 100, following that you can simplify, and therefore 50% basically means 50 out of 100, or you could simplify it basically means 1 out of 2. Another example, 125%. Yes, folks, think about an investment. If you invest 100% of your weekly savings, the idea is for it to grow. So you have to get more used to in junior high school as well as high school that percents do not just mean out of 100 or max out at 100, I should say. So 125% literally still means 125 out of 100. Then you can rewrite it as, or simplify it as 5 over 4, 1 over 1 and 1/4. So 125% means 125 out of 100. You could also say 5 out of 4, or simplest form, you would say 1 whole and 1/4. I would recommend that you pause the video, write these down, rewrite them as fractions in simplest form, and in a moment, I'll go ahead and give you the answers. Pause and come back when you're ready. So, not surprisingly, most of you have that one memorized. 25% can be rewritten as 25 out of 100. Final answer, 1 out of 4. 60%, 60 out of 100, 6 out of 10, down to 3 out of 5. 175% can be rewritten as 1 whole and 3/4. Again, you write that out of 100. Now from this, you can either change it to mixed number and then reduce, or you could reduce 7 over 4 and then change it to a mixed number. So that's the nice part about mathematics. Multiple paths leading to the proper same destination. 120 out of 100 can be rewritten as 1 and 20 hundredths, 1 and 2 tenths, 1 and 1/5 in simplest form. All right, pause once again, and I want you to rewrite each of those. I'll give you spaghetti, right? So if I look at spaghetti, 25%, which means 25 out of 100 will reduce to 1/4. See if you can come up with the next two. Pause, come back when you're ready. Pizza being 30%, 30 out of 100 reduces to 3 out of 10 in simplest form. Chicken strips, 15%, 15 out of 100, little longer to reduce, but 5 is the greatest common factor, so it would have a final fraction of 3 out of 20. All right, so what if we go a different direction? What if we rewrite or rename percents as decimals? Well, you're still going to use the same basic principle where you can write it out of 100. So for instance, 56% can be rewritten as 56 out of 100. But now that we have this with a denominator that's a power of 10, we can write it in decimal form. Simply write 56 hundredths. Don't forget that the tens place comes first, hundredths place comes next. Another example, 8%. Write that as a fraction, 8 out of 100. Just be careful. Do not write this in the wrong place value because that says 8 tenths. We need it to be 8 hundredths. One more example, 120%. As we talked, we're going to need to put a little more emphasis on percents over 100. Okay, but speaking of over 100, we're going to write 120 over 100 and then rewrite it as a mixed number, 1 whole 20 hundredths. Although some of you can skip that middle step and you can go right to saying, look, Mr. Callan, if we got 120 hundredths, then that 0 needs to be in the hundredths place. Frankly, the 0 is not necessary. What you will notice that I do not do is I do not reduce this to 1 1/5. It gets a little tougher to change a fraction into a decimal if it does not have a denominator that is a power of 10. So I would highly recommend keep it as hundredths or at most reduce it to 2/10. But don't change the denominator so that it is not a power of 10. So that it, yeah, that's what I meant to say. All right, pause, rewrite these. Come on back when you're ready. 17%, 17 out of 100, 17 hundredths. 2%, 2 out of 100, 2 in the hundredths place. 104%, 104 out of 100. So that means 1 whole. 104 out of 100. That means 1 whole and 4 hundredths. And now you can see how that breaks up a little better. Now I'm going to close with 2 what I feel are the toughest ones. And that is what happens if you have a part of a percent that's written in fraction form. Well, don't forget, you can still rewrite this. What does percent mean? It means per 100. And now what we have here, I can write the same thing over here. What we have here is a complex fraction. Complex fraction has either a numerator, denominator, or both. That is a fraction. So what I'm going to do is just simply rewrite this. And of course, we're going to rewrite both of these in improper fraction form. And now we're going to remember that when we divide fractions, we don't actually divide, we multiply by the multiplicative inverse. And you almost always will see some really nice cross-canceling here. For instance, 25 goes into 25 once, 25 goes into 100 4 times. And now we have 1 times 1 and 3 times 4. So 8 1/3% is the same as saying 1 out of 12. Think about it, a little smaller than 1 out of 10, right? Let's do the same thing with 106 1/4%. We can rewrite this as an old school division problem, numerator divided by denominator. And we can rewrite these in improper fraction form. We start by writing 100 wholes as just that, 100 over 1, 100 wholes. Now we multiply 106 times 4 and add 1. Speaking of rewriting, change that to multiply by the multiplicative inverse. And again, almost always, little disappearing ink here, almost always when you look to cross-reduce, you'll see either 50s or 25s go into those. In this case, 25s do. So 25s go into 100 4 times, 25s go into 400, I believe 17 times. I hope I'm not mistaken there. We end up with 17 times 1 over 4 times 4 for a final answer of 1 1/16, which, by the way, makes sense because it's slightly over 100%. So don't be intimidated if you have fractions within percents. We've already learned how to simplify complex fractions, and so we have that skill. Basically, that's how we crank up 6th grade into 7th grade. We crank it up a notch with difficult percents like that. So at this time, onward to homework. Just a reminder, 12 to 52 is evens only. Directions, problem, work, answer, all that jazz. Meanwhile, for problem 54 to 59, write the directions down, but I'm giving you permission not to write the problem. You can simply write work and answer. Don't forget your work on the whole page. I know some of you can do some things mentally, write some work down. And then I'm, of course, going to ask you guys to do a couple problems on CAMI or in class number 24 to 48. I can check those. And then you continue on with homework. Thank you, folks. Let's grow.